The open ocean is a vast and unpredictable place, a world full of mysteries lurking beneath the waves. No two journeys are ever the same, and for those who make their living at sea, every trip brings the possibility of the unexpected. Tonight, we set sail with a crew of seasoned fishermen, exhausted after weeks at sea, eager to return home with their hard-earned catch. But just as the shore comes into view, something in the water stops them in their tracks. A fleeting glimpse of movement, a struggling figure breaking the surface. What they find will test their instincts, their compassion, and their understanding of the ocean itself. Stay with me as we dive into this extraordinary encounter. Any fisherman will tell you that no trip out on the open ocean is ever the same. The murky waters are still full of mysteries and secrets yet to be uncovered, and you never know what strange objects or creatures can suddenly appear in your fishing nets. This, on top of the fact that the open oceans can be some of the most challenging environments to tread, makes it an unpredictable experience. It can go from as calm as a night in a village to as rough and dangerous as Detroit City at New Year. This is why most fishermen are at least somewhat relieved when they can head back to shore after a couple of long and hard days of fishing. But when this fishing crew encountered something they would have never expected on their way back home, none of them hesitated to spring into action immediately. The fishing crew aboard the Golden Delight experienced this to the fullest extent, but what they found in the water might just make it all worth it. They had been out on the open ocean for almost 2 full weeks. This was a lot longer than normal, but they had barely managed to catch anything in the first couple of days, and could not afford to return to the harbor empty-handed. These hard-working people didn't have a lot of cash saved up for days when they would return with no catch. Being a fisherman is a difficult and dangerous job, but it sadly doesn't provide a reliable salary. Due to overfishing, there are often days when they catch a lot less profitable fish compared to just a few days prior. Thus, they decided to change strategy and head further out into waters that they knew had less traffic from other fishing boats, increasing their chances. It took them a while to get there, but their effort was not in vain. They found a large patch of open water completely absent of other fishing boats, meaning they had no competition. The first time their nets touched the water, they knew there was a high chance they had struck gold, especially when they started pulling it in. The net was tougher to pull back than it had been in almost a year. With a lot of effort, they managed to get it on board and gazed in awe at the incredible mass of fish moving frantically on the deck of the ship. The first net was full of fish, and they had managed to catch the largest amount they had ever gotten on a single fishing trip. The storage space was completely packed after only 2 days of fishing in this spot. The crew was overjoyed and celebrated with every haul they got on board. Their luck seemed endless. Besides all the fish they hauled in, they also saw some other amazing animals out on the open waters. But the whales that pulled up beside their ship were by far the most spectacular. With the storage of the ship filled to the brim, they were finally ready to head back home. They couldn't wait any longer. Otherwise, the fish might spoil, which would mean all their efforts would have been in vain. On their way home, they encountered very dangerous waters that were almost impossible to navigate. They had to make a detour to avoid taking a chance that they might never come back from. This added at least 2 more days to their trip. First, they had to go back in the direction they came from to avoid the stormy waters overtaking them. When they were far enough away, they could circle around the storm. However, this also meant their journey would take much longer. The storm was faster than them, but by taking this route, they would probably avoid the roughest and most dangerous parts. Luckily for them, the captain's calculations were correct. Exhausted from being out at sea for so long and suffering from a severe shortage of fresh water and food, the crew was desperate to get home. But they knew that any land was still at least a couple of days away. They would have to hold out a little longer. Fortunately, as a well-stocked fishing boat, they had plenty of fish to eat, and the water they managed to catch from the storm would ensure they did not dehydrate completely. The rest of the crew spent their days playing cards or dice and looking out over the endless sea. With a bit of luck, they would sometimes see some sea life surface, but this was rare. They were bored and couldn't stand the smell of fish anymore. Luckily, they were only about a day away now, according to the captain. They couldn't see any land yet, but they had spotted a couple of boats in the distance a while ago. They considered approaching them to ask for water, but this would only delay them further. Since they couldn't be sure whether the other boats had water to spare or would even be willing to share, they decided not to take the risk and continued toward the shore. Then, suddenly, they saw one of the most beautiful sights, land far in the distance, just reaching above the horizon. The crew was ecstatic and seemed to have a whole new burst of energy. They screamed and celebrated as if they had won the lottery. But amid all the celebration, one crew member couldn't take his eyes off the land. He was finally about to get home. Then, something emerged from the water and caught his eye. It took him a few moments to adjust to what he was seeing. It was a beautiful and obviously mature dolphin. Now, this in itself was not a rare sight. They had seen multiple dolphins on their trip, and almost every time they went out on the water, they encountered these incredible creatures. They always had to be careful not to accidentally catch one in their nets, which had happened a few times before. Luckily, they had always been able to set them free in relatively good condition, but there was something off about this particular dolphin. It seemed to be struggling to move or dive back down. It only took the perceptive crew member a couple of moments to understand what was wrong. Its tail was caught in a big and heavy fishing net, likely discarded by another fishing boat, or possibly even by them. They too had lost a couple of their nets and other equipment to the unpredictable ocean. The dolphin looked extremely tired from carrying the heavy net. Who knew how long it had been trapped? Obviously long enough to be separated from its pod, as no other dolphins were in sight. When the crew member fully realized what he was witnessing, he immediately alerted the others. It took them a little while to understand what was happening, as they were still celebrating the sighting of land. By the time the crew spotted the dolphin, it was about to pass them. This was their chance to catch and help it, but there was still a sizable distance between them and the creature. It would be impossible to reach it quickly. Now that everyone was aware of the struggling dolphin, they had a decision to make. Was it worth it to turn the boat around and chase after the helpless dolphin to free it, even if it meant being away from land even longer? Or should they just continue home? The decision was made within a second, and everyone on the boat wholeheartedly agreed they would go after the dolphin. Some might think that because they catch fish for a living, fishermen have no regard for marine life. But fishermen appreciate and respect the sea. It is essential to their survival, much like a farmer and his cattle. He loves his animals, even though he knows he will eventually have to kill some of them. The captain quickly turned the boat around and started chasing after the dolphin. After a few attempts to escape, the dolphin gave up and stayed near the boat, possibly too exhausted to resist. Using their net, they managed to trap it on the first attempt and carefully pulled it aboard. Two strong crew members held the dolphin still while another cut away the entangled net. The dolphin, now freed, seemed more energetic. They quickly released it back into the water. The dolphin immediately dove deep down and disappeared. As they resumed their journey, they suddenly saw a dolphin jumping alongside the boat, almost certainly the same one they had saved. It was as if the dolphin was thanking them. Finally, back on shore, the crew not only had a large haul of fish to sell, but also an unforgettable story to tell.